Hello and welcome to this episode of Conscious Design. I'm your host, Ian Peterman, and author of the Conscious Design book. And today we have Ryan McKeever on our show. He's TV commercial and corporate director, entrepreneur, hemp farmer, now developer, and the last few years been really focused in the hemp industry. Welcome to the show.
Ian, thanks so much. It's good to be here. I've enjoyed our conversations over the last couple of months, and congratulations on everything you have going on. So it's very exciting. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You've done a lot, but if we're to shrink down and focus a little bit, you got into the hemp industry back when it was just CBD. You know, you're getting into industrial hemp and things like that. What got you into it first? How did you start getting interested into this? How have you seen things shift?
Quite a shift it has been. I first got into the hemp industry, CBD industry, back in 2014. I was hired by a cable channel to interview one of the Stanley brothers for one of their programs regarding CBD back then. That was, an unheard of term, and no one knew what it was. So that was, I was dispatched to produce a TV segment about CBD and this company called Charlotte's Web. So fast forward to 2018, we jumped into the hemp game, my wife and I, on her 10-acre farm. The farm was basically being used for a rental farm, and the 10 acres, about 9 acres of it, was just a pasture land for horses, just a few horses. So 2018 was a big year for CBD biomass. Biomass is the buds, so to speak, of the hemp flower, the cannabis flower. THC, the marijuana world, that's what you would smoke as the biomass. The CBD hemp world, it's what you extract CBD from, and roughly makes up, 40% of the entire oil that's extracted from the plant. Could be up to 40% of it could be CBD. I believed in CBD after the interview with Joel Stanley and hearing about the efficacy of his product when it came to treating a youth who had epilepsy. And I believe it was epilepsy. And so, just hearing from the actual mother, sitting in front of me, like I was the guy that did the interview, like here she is telling me how her child went from 200 seizures a month to less than a handful. And, you go from a quality of living to quality of life that's like borderline, miserable, to then actually having a quality of life that's a meaningful and productive life, not one that's hampered by pain and uncertainty. So that's why my wife and I did this. We had the farm. I had the ability to bring people together because of my storytelling career. I've been a director for 23 years and have owned a company that does all the commercials and TV projects and corporate projects. So I've owned all the equipment, and basically we just turned the equipment on us to tell our story of becoming CBD hemp farmers to try and create medicine that was to help people. That was 2018. I involved, nearly a dozen different people to be a part of the journey. So I would basically film them and their story, whether it was a small-time farmer who's been doing it for a few years or the largest CBD hemp farmer in the county that had a 1 million pound hemp deal with a foreign country. So I involved all these people in our storytelling and turned the cameras on them. And, selfishly, like for me, it was, I get to learn from these people who have been doing it already, and I get to learn how not to fail as a hemp farmer. And so that's what we did. Was I took the camera crews and myself and became kind of like the host of this docuseries show, learned how they did their operation, applied the knowledge to what we were doing with our operation, which first was making genetics. We made our own genetic line. We crossed 2 different hemp strains together to make our strain that we use in our field. That was an entire journey of itself, was creating genetics, right? Sexing the plants. And basically we started with 4 hemp plants, grew to like 60, took a number of those and converted those into males. You can literally sex the plant by, there's a whole process to do that. But, then we ended up having, we built a greenhouse, had a huge crop of female plants and we crossed with the male plants to pollinate them and created our own genetic line. That whole thing didn't go up in flames. I wish it would have, but it went up in mites. Let's just say we had a mite infestation that, of course, it's all on camera and they're crawling all over me while all this is happening. So the stories are really interesting and compelling. And then, of course, we followed patients of the CBD medicine that we were creating. So everything from the genetic line all the way to the end user, which was the patient, right? We really wanted to see someone and their results from CBD. We interviewed a number of people, followed a number of stories, and just met some incredible people who have had their lives changed by CBD. That was 2018, 2019. The fall of 2019, things started to get a little dicey with the pricing. So 2018 was a great year for CBD farmers. You're looking at $25 a pound, right? And so when a farmer is used to making 7 cents a pound for corn, and you hear about a new crop that you can put in your rotation that's $25 a pound, not 7 cents. So there was a huge boom of farmers creating this, surplus of CBD biomass in our country because, of course, any farmer would want to do that, right? I mean, you've been slaving away for 7 cents a pound. You got this opportunity. I'm doing it. What happened was 2019, it all came to a big crashing halt. The fall of 2019, after the harvest came in, we were a part of that harvest. Prices went from $25 a pound to 85 cents a pound in 3 months. And when you have a 90% market collapse in 3 months, that is devastating. So all of these farmers were left high and dry with biomass in the fields, contracts that were worth nothing, right? So it was a big mess. But for me, it was a great opportunity to tell some of these stories. So I continued the storytelling through the chaos and the craziness, right? And that led me to speaking at conventions across the country, speaking about the storytelling, right? And that's where it really started with the passion for the medicine. We're not necessarily replacing a pharmaceutical, but, providing something for people that would then be an alternative to a pharmaceutical option, right? So it's using healthy natural medicine as opposed to a synthetic medicine that's made in a lab, for monetary purposes. That's really our why. 2019, the whole collapse, kind of get back on track with that. Basically, all of that collapsed, right? The market went to 90% collapse, and all of these people had their biomass in the field. And so using kind of the methodology that I did to create the entire docuseries, I was like, you know what? I know some extractors, I know some processors, I know some science guys that are working with stuff in the lab. Let me see if I can work some stuff here and bring some of these people together so they're not literally losing the farm, right? I mean, this one deal was worth many, many millions of dollars, with this foreign country. And so I was trying to help these people out. So I ended up connecting some extraction labs, some sciencey outfits with some of these farmers that were really in bad shape. Yeah, that was 2019. That became the first wave of Delta-8 across the country. So 2019, this guy had 1 million pounds of biomass, this farmer. And, through the connections that I was able to make with him, it would have been done eventually, but I kind of, I was proud to have helped them to not lose the farm, so to speak. But, they sold 275,000 pounds for Delta-8 extraction. That became the first wave of Delta-8 products across our country, 2019. Of course, it was people were dabbling with it in other smaller markets. But the big wave came in 2019, and that was part of the collapse was people ended up selling their biomass for Delta-8 extraction. So 2020, of course, everything shut down. Hemp goes to zero. It's kind of like reset time. All the guys that have been working on all the other things like the polymers, the hempcrete, the hemp bedding, the fiber, the textiles, all that was kind of being worked on in the background, the hemp wood and the wool, all of that stuff. So that didn't really have any noise back then, 2020. kind of reset the entire hemp marketplace, basically. And that's when you saw some of these guys like Cam McIntosh with Amerishav like come on board, and Matty Mead with his company Hempitecture, I think. And there's also Hempwood down in Kentucky. So there's a lot of these companies that had been working in the background to try and like get a foothold into a marketplace, a building marketplace, so to speak, for the construction industry. And so that's kind of where it's evolved to. A lot of these verticals are starting to develop. You're getting, especially Cam McIntosh with Amerishav. He is the guy that's getting the IRC codes passed for hempcrete to be used as a insulative material in the building and construction world. Eventually, it will become load-bearing structure. I just don't think they have the testing or the consistency of genetics to create that just quite yet. So that's kind of where it's at now. It's being worked on. As far as the journey goes for our storytelling, we stopped filming after about 2020, kind of midway through 21. I had been filming at that point for 3.5 years, but I've stayed in the industry. The connections I've made through the docuseries, the passion that I have for this plant really has just continuously evolved. It started off with CBD, moved into hempcrete, which was kind of the next big buzz thing after 2019. Then I moved into some of my friends were doing the animal bedding in Florida, and then came along this hemp flavin I didn't know anything about, which was amazing and interesting. And, all these different things that have evolved, and, plastics and resin and all these, of course, as some of that material. And so it's exciting to see all this happen. And Jean Lotus, who's kind of the hempcrete queen of the industry, she's come out with the Hemp Builders Association, or the guide to hemp building and hemp building association Rolodex, so to speak, of all the people that have hemp businesses that are in the building industry. There's a lot of people that are kind of rising to the top. Of course, I wouldn't be remiss not to mention a good friend, Morris Beagle, who is the owner of NOCO. That convention's coming up in Estes Park here in April, the 10th to the 13th, I believe is when that is. So that's a great kind of regathering of the hemp industry throughout the year, and especially going from the cannabinoids to now the industrial hemp. It's a very interesting journey to be on and just be a part of. So that's kind of the journey, so to speak, where we're at now.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen the shift over, and as you know, I have a hemp material, right? Industrial is really, I really see a lot there. It's from what you've seen, I feel like it was a .com bubble a little bit, right? CBD just came, blew up. Yeah. Some people made it out, some people didn't. And now we're
right.
With the industrial side of things, right? Where it doesn't feel like it's bubbling. It doesn't feel like it's spiking quite as quickly. There's a lot of, I would say, smart hesitation in jumping in. Not that there isn't money, and people are getting investments, people are putting money into it, but it's not as crazy as it was. So I'm curious how you've seen that shift happen as well, and what you're seeing in terms of how are investors approaching this, how are companies approaching industrial hemp, as opposed to what they did with CBD, and kind of everybody just went crazy really quick.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, like there's a lot of people that have been burned and feel burned. And so really what it comes down to is there is a huge trust deficit in the hemp industry. Like after 2019 and then the COVID, everybody just kind of, closed the door. The whole hemp thing, like it basically set us back so far. We had so much momentum with CBD, and then the rug just got taken right out from under us. So the big problem is there isn't like an established certifying body or a certifying authority that represents quality standard in the industry. Like other industries have that type of thing. They have a certification that goes with something that, is a standardized commodity that means something. And, to kind of go down that road a little bit, like at this point, hemp is barely recognized as even an agricultural product. And when you think about corn or soybeans or something along those lines, that is a traded commodity, agricultural commodity. And literally a farmer can take their product down to the local co-op and get market value for that. It's traded on a market exchange. There isn't anything that exists like that for hemp. So really, there's a huge problem at the very beginning of the business chain, right? It's not that investors are leery, it's that investors are looking for stability. They want to see a market that's stable, that is backed by an entire supply chain of credibility and stability. And so that's, I think, what investors are waiting for, is something like that to happen. And there's things out in the marketplace that are being developed to satisfy that need, I think, that investors are looking for. One of these things I've come across through my storytelling is a company called Trusted Harvest Exchange. And a company like Trusted Harvest, or one that is very similar in ways that can bring that trust deficit back to the marketplace and kind of remove that deficit and bring a surplus to trust. And so what companies like Trusted Harvest does is basically that was created by an attorney who in 2019 was inundated with hemp farmers who had failed contracts. And so they were seeking, monetary justice, I guess, for the contracts that they had signed in good faith with buyers. And because these contracts are worth absolutely nothing, and it became just as good as like a hand, as good as a handshake, right? You're doing the old boy farm ag thing where you're selling your product on your honor, and they're buying it on their honor, saying that they're going to do that. So really, we have to implement a standardized commodities exchange in the hemp industry, one that covers the entire supply chain from genetics all the way through processing, manufacturing, and products. And it covers everything from cannabinoids to all the different verticals of industrial hemp. We just did a research the other day, and we found like 31 active verticals inside industrial hemp right now. I've been talking with the guys at Trusted Harvest, and they're making sure that each one of those verticals is addressed when basically this exchange that they're creating comes online. Anyone from a farmer all the way to an end use person can have the confidence knowing that, all the genetics they're using the right genetics, which represent quality, a quality standard. If you're using, just as a basic, fundamental thing to show the difference of how a hemp strains can be. You've got the cannabinoid hemp over here, right, which is shaped more like a Christmas tree. That's where your CBD comes from. And then you have your industrial hemp over here on this side that is literally like a 20-foot tall corn stalk, straight up and down like a big broomstick. And so everywhere in between, right, there's genetics everywhere in between. And so you have to make sure that you have the genetic for that product, especially when it comes to building materials. I mean, if whoever Joe Smith is using the wrong genetic in his hempcrete material, that could have a significant impact down the road as far as unforeseen things that could happen. So there's a lot of variables there that need to get ironed out. And a company like Trusted Harvest, what they're trying to do is provide that trust so that the market can continue and investors come back to the table, with a thirsty appetite.
Hey, it's Ian here. So glad you're enjoying this episode of Conscious Design. If you want the full scoop on conscious design, what it is, how we do it, how you can do it, then check out our book. We wrote it so creative entrepreneurs like you can code social and environmental responsibility right into your brand's DNA. You can download the first chapter for free. Link is in the description. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
So they're an independent company creating this market. Is the gap there because the current commodities market just won't touch it? They won't back it? Is this something that regulatory is a component of this hampering this? Because I feel like there's multiple angles, right? So I'm just kind of curious if they got up and running, is there anything else that needs to happen? Or is it kind of
Right.
building trust, right? Is this enough, do you think, trust by, let's say, Trusted Harvest up and running tomorrow? Does that build in enough trust by itself? Or is there more layers we got to add before, say I'm an investor and I go, yes, I trust that the commodities is there.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of out of my realm. I haven't quite gone into okay, how can I bring all of this together, right? Because trying to bring all these different pieces together, I'm sure it's doable in a very thought out way. Like that could happen probably, I would say in the next year. So it's really trying to tie into government programs that are looking for kind of like what we were talking about originally, which is the sustainability piece. I think it would start with partnering with, the government or the state individually for a development or some sort of, low income housing that would create a buzz that would then generate momentum. Because really that's what it comes down to is we have we're throwing spitballs at the wall right now, but no one's paying attention, and so politicians can do their thing. But if no one in the public or the building sector or, all these different sectors that could benefit from, industrial hemp, if they're not paying attention, it's just a bunch of individuals educating people on their own knowledge rather than a standardized something that people can get behind. I could really go down that road. There's quite a few companies that do represent standardization in high risk marketplaces, right? And especially commodities trading. And so I know that Trusted Harvest is seeking guidance from these companies who have been in existence for over 100 years, who already have over $1 trillion of assets out in the marketplace that their standard represents. So these guys are doing it right. They're not being hasty about coming to the market. They want to come to the market in the right way. So that way the need is filled and, there's no questions about what their, the platform satisfies in the marketplace. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And then, that brings up a whole other thing. So once this exchange comes online, the farmers can be assured of their payments, right? Everything is going to be in escrow. So, there's going to be a payment verification. So the farmer knows he's going to get paid. The end use processor knows what genetic is being used because they purchased the genetics from a certified seed or genetic company that has that certification that represents the entire supply chain. And so it's just going to be a very interesting platform that comes out. And what's really fascinating about the whole thing is, throughout this journey with the hemp industry and learning about the plant, a new, vertical has come about, a new sustainability idea has materialized. And that is the one of carbon sequestration and carbon, offsetting a carbon footprint, specifically for large corporations who use enormous amounts of energy. And so for the Trusted Harvest guys, they are starting to build in a secondary income stream for the farmer, because that's really what all this started was. Farmers got screwed in 2019 because of failed contracts. So how can we help the farmer out even more? We can give them a secondary income stream whereby the hemp that they are growing will then be able to be logged very specifically as far as how much carbon that particular hemp crop has sequestered from the earth. So then through this platform gets converted into a carbon credit that then can be openly traded onto a carbon exchange. So all this is being done in the background to try and bring some stability and trust back to the marketplace for, establish a marketplace that's going to be here for 100 years, right? So that's the idea that these guys have.
Right. Well, I love that idea. With Odin, we had that idea of, right, this carbon sequestration. It works fantastic. It also is really great at rebuilding the soil as a fixer crop, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things we looked at, and we're in building materials, industrial fibers, basically. But being able to attach it and go, hey, yeah, you're buying this, and by the way, there's a carbon credit with it, and so we're
exactly
this. Your end customer, we're not going to use too much and producing it. Like we don't need the carbon credit really with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But, if we're making, let's say, pallets for somebody, they probably are. They're probably using a lot of equipment and energy to do what they're doing. And so being able to add value to that and go, this also, you're going to buy this. Here's the price. There's also a carbon credit attached to it. And this is how much you can get from it. Really increasing the value chain in that way so that everybody gets a little bit more value out of it, which I think is important. And also a good product, right? It's good. It's a good fiber to.
Definitely. And I think that kind of is what that trusted harvest represents, is basically that secure. So it's all of those things, it's to kind of bring back that trust deficit. It is the secured contract platform, just like what you would see on PayPal or eBay or whatever. It's all digital. It's done with 3 clicks. The purchaser and buyer are assured of their payment because it's verified in escrow. And then the farmer has the ability and the opportunity to log the sequestered carbon data and sell that on the open market. And then the whole thing is under the certified supply chain. It really solves all the issues that we've been identifying over the last many years in the hemp industry. And I'm pretty sure I'm speaking at NOCO. I'm supposed to be speaking at NOCO, so I need to talk to Morris to make sure that's going to happen. But it probably will be a lot of what we're talking about here, basically talking about the supply chain, the trust deficit, and kind of where we're at in the marketplace. So come to NOCO and check it out, everybody. Or I'm sure there will be a recording of it. So
yeah. Well, and I think what I'm also interested in seeing is, Ray, the hemp industry had to kind of reset. And now there's also this opportunity to create transparency from the ground up, which is something that other industries, like we're trying to make other supply chains transparent because they haven't been for 100 years, right? Never been transparent.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really curious to see this develop and see how, success here is something that, as it's successful, we're really curious to see how it influences other supply chains and then pairs with that so that this maybe can become that template, right? Of here's how you build in commodities exchange, transparency, and layering. Like I really like this idea of layering value, right? Or core value, but then here's a carbon credit. And there's, I'm sure we can think of a billion other things to layer into there, but all just added to this transparency of this is what it actually does. And this is how you could see, the genetics, right? Of knowing, oh, we got this seed, this genetic, we grew it, we processed it, right? It's a very clean, very clear path that we're missing in other places. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. That's kind of the idea behind, staying in the industry is once we do end up selling the docuseries, which has 2 seasons, still needs a lot of work and some fill-in stuff. But once that does sell, we hope to just pick right back up with the cameras, because right now I'm in the industry as kind of an industry expert, connector of people, and a presenter on stage, someone who is an educator and informer and tries to move the industry forward. So I'd love to bring the cameras back involved, but it's a huge expense, and I don't quite have the bandwidth to do all these other projects that I'm doing and hire my film crew to travel around the country with me yet. So we're getting there. We're really trying to make that happen.
Also, I think there's a lot of change happening. And it's great to see that Trusted Harvest is out there working to try to build that trust. I think it's, like you said, is important. We need to rebuild that as a market before. There's still investors investing in it, but they are not as gung ho as they used to be in the space. So building that up step by step, and I think as difficult as a reset is, I think taking advantage of a reset and setting out and really planning, how do we want the market to be? How do we want it to be guided? How do we want transparency built in? It is a bit of a unique opportunity that I think if everybody involved takes advantage of it, well, we'll end up with a stronger and better market than what we had before and avoid potentially even some of this bubble behavior, right? Because that it happens, bubbles in markets. So if we can see it,
Yeah.
stop it, control it, right, that keeps us from, in 10 years having another bubble that wrecks it again. And that would be, we want to avoid
Yeah.
that. We want this, as you said, we want this market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a way that might happen. So Cameron McIntosh over at Amerishop there, he and his team were just awarded, I think it was $1.8 million to develop something through the military. So I think it had something to do with maybe vests or something. I'm not quite sure, but I haven't really followed up on that since I kind of briefed over the news. It may have been less than 2 weeks ago. So the grants are out there for particular types of things. I know there's going to be some housing money available if it's not already available. I haven't looked into it recently. That could be a way to go, is like through the government instead, because then you get a foothold in the government. Let's say they make this is if you can't find the funding, right? Of course, ideally you would keep it private sector and go fund, get some funding. But if you can't, or if a person can't who is looking to develop a unique product in the hemp space, I mean, as we've all heard, there's 27,000 uses for hemp. Right now, there's about 30 verticals. There's a lot of room to innovate there. And so if a person wants to do that, that could potentially be available through like a government grant or something like that. So, because I know the money's out there. Cameron just got almost $2 million.
It's out there. You got to find it. That's the work part, but it is there.
Yeah.
Well, and before we wrap up, and I really enjoy this conversation, what else would you put out there for companies? Industrial hemp is growing. So you have any last thoughts and anything you would add to share with companies jumping into industrial hemp? What should they think about and be aware of jumping in?
Well, the big thing is to try and convince someone that it's okay to do, right? So that's the deficit that we're trying to overcome. I would say that I just had a really good thought, but basically for someone that's trying to come into the market as far as an investor, there's opportunity there that it's a high risk market, right? It's just like any high risk market. The reward could be magnificent. Not only could you financially gain significantly from something that takes off, but you're also in a position to help others, right? That's the big thing of the whole hemp industry is, for me, it started with helping others. And, I know what I was going to say. So really what it comes down to for investors is to understand the industry has changed drastically since 2017 Farm Bill, right? 2017, you had people running around Capitol Hill wearing capes made out of hemp, and they're running around like Super Hemp Man and stuff, and looking like they're straight out of the Grateful Dead concert. And I love those people. Like, they're my people. But like, to represent an industry on Capitol Hill, you have to play the game. Right. You gotta play the game. And so I feel like kind of that the early days of the hempsters that were out there that were more or less like the hippie transitioners to the cannabinoid marketplace in the early hemp days, 2017 to 2020-ish. I feel like those have been replaced by business people. Not saying they're gone, right? Those people who were starting kind of the OGs in the new hemp revolution in 2017, like, they're still around, but it's not all about the cannabinoid market anymore, right? There's other things that are out that have been replaced by business people who know how to get products into big verticals like the lumber industry, the textile industry, wood industry. So there's a lot of the animal bedding industry, the feed industry, the grain industry. Like, there's a lot of verticals that are emerging that are from real world business experienced people. And so those, as some of these start popping off and you start hearing about them in national news organizations, not just the hemp world, because that's a vacuum. We're all in this vacuum cheering each other on. But once one of these stories pops out of that bubble and gets picked up by, a major podcaster or, Joe Rogan or, whoever it is, Tucker Carlson or Lex Friedman or Lex, whatever his name is, whoever it is, like once the sphere is broken, then, you're going to see a momentum that is going to come back to the industry like we experienced in the early days once the Farm Bill passed. So that's kind of what I would tell someone looking at it is the hippies have been kind of, I guess, not replaced, but it's kind of transitioned to more of the business acumen people. So, but they both have the same heart, right? They both want to help. It's not like one is better than the other. They both come at it from a passion, right? Most of the people that I know in the hemp industry, it starts with the plant, whereas everything else, it starts with making money, right? How can I make money on this? But with hemp, like the majority of people I've met, it starts with the plant. So that's kind of cool. I really like that about the industry. We're all kind of in it for the same reason. And we know how beneficial the plant is in whatever way you want to pick, whether it's carbon sequestration, medicine, building, anything really. So,
right.
That's what I was
yeah. As I said, there's so many uses for it. So pick your favorite use and there you go. Well, amazing. This has been really great talking with you, Ryan. And for last bit here, for anybody that's wanting to reach out to you, connect with you, maybe invest, get another season of your show done, what's the best way to find you, reach out to you, and connect with you?
We have a number of companies out there. We jumped on the CBD company trained back in the day, and we really believe in the minor cannabinoids, minor cannabinoids. That's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about that for 45 minutes. I don't want to plug all of my companies or whatever, but we have a CBD company, CBDV in particular, and CBN. So you can find those two products at peacebehempy.com, like Peace Be Hempy. We have a mushroom company that we just launched called Rockets. So like rockits.net. So like for your neural network. And mostly I'm on LinkedIn. Just my first and last name, Ryan McKeever, McKeever on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's been a great tool for business for us, and looking forward to many more connections, and hopefully, many more conversations. I literally can break down the minor cannabinoids and like how those are going to be used in pharmaceutical medicines moving forward. I mean, there's a whole story there. There's literally a whole story. And also in the future, we could talk about that multi-million-dollar deal that was with one of the farmers I followed, which is a major storyline in our show, which is now currently in international court for multi-millions of dollars for just crazy stuff going on. But yeah, there's a lot of story there. So
absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks, Ryan, and appreciate you being on the show.
Right. That was good, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ian. Hey, guys.
Hey there. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I hope that you're enjoying the content we're putting out. If you're looking for more ways to learn about this, to get involved, create your own consciously designed products, there's a couple ways that you can do that. First is our book, Conscious Design, which you'll find a link to in the description of this episode. Please check that out. Go over quite a bit of information, what the process is, how I've applied it to product design, and some really great examples of companies out there that are doing really great work, some of whom you have seen on this podcast. The other way is our course, 4 Weeks to Launch, where I peel back the curtain on how to develop a product start to finish in a way that can create positive impact rather than any negative ones. So please check that out. That is a great resource. That will also be linked in the description as well. And see you on the next one.